Back to the morning show here on Arise News. Corruption is a complex social, political, and economic phenomenon that affects all countries. That was why, on the 31st of October 2003, the General Assembly of the United Nations adopted the United Nations Convention Against Corruption. The Assembly also designated December 9, that is today, as International Anti-Corruption Day every year to raise awareness of corruption and the role of the Convention in combating and preventing it. Governments, private sector, the media, non-governmental organizations, and citizens around the world are joining forces to fight this crime that undermines democratic institutions, slows down economic development, and contributes to governmental instability. Joining us now to discuss this and more is Shintema Binga, Resident Commissioner, Independent Corrupt Practices Commission, Lagos. He's also a lawyer. Welcome to the morning show.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome, and thank you for honoring our invitation so that we can all focus on this important subject of corruption.
The pleasure is mine.
Yeah, but you know, with the United Nations declaring December 9 globally in awareness about corruption, it does look like corruption is a major issue in virtually the entire world. But we tend to get the impression that Nigeria has a special problem. Is that the case? What do you think?
Well, I will not agree that Nigeria has a special problem. I think, just as you've said, I will tend to rather agree with you that corruption is a very serious problem that is being faced worldwide. However, we in Nigeria have chosen to face it headlong. We have had challenges, but we are making progress, particularly with the level of energy being infused into the fight against corruption by the present administration. Even with the introduction of a new management for the ICPC board to make it stronger and face corrupt practice, to face corruption headlong and make sure that we put it behind us.
Okay. And recently, the ICPC has been focusing a lot on constituency projects, and we know everything that's been talked about with regards to that, and the presidency coming out to question senators on where this money has gone over the past couple of years. Why constituency projects per se? What exactly is going on within that sector that the ICPC is really trying to delve into?
Actually, the focus on constituency project is a brainchild, let me use that word, of Professor Owasonye, our
Bolaji
Owasonye, the new chairman of the ICPC. He feels that it is not only, in the fight against corruption, let's say we have a little division. Some prefer to go the prevention aspect, the others prefer to go enforcement. Now he has chosen to merge the two to make sure that there's both enforcement and prevention. That is why he chose to focus on the constituency projects, because the constituency projects in themselves, they are the means by which the government wants to reach all the nooks and crannies of our society to make sure that developmental projects get to all citizens and all people staying in Nigeria. So if we are now able to focus and make sure that the constituency projects serve the purpose for which they were introduced, then we will be making progress. That is why the ICPC, under the leadership of the new board, has chosen to now go into the constituency project initiative and make sure that the primary goal is to make sure that the service that is projected to reach the ordinary citizen actually gets to them. Now, if that is to be done, that the ICPC chose to now go into the constituency projects, look at them, see the ones that have been executed, see the ones that are still pending, with the primary objective of making sure that they are executed.
But the senators believe you should be going after the MDAs.
Well, it's a matter of style, let me put it that way, to say that you focus. There's nothing to say that the commission is not going after the MDAs. It is just a project that is being pursued to make sure that a particular aspect of developmental projects come to fruition, are achieved. That is why we are going on the constituency projects. Now, the senators should not think it is going against senators. No. This constituency project thing is, to start with, the senators or people in the National Assembly initiate the project, and then, from what we understand, others execute the contracts. So they cannot think that probably it's going after them by going for getting involved in the constituency project issue.
Well, no. Let me help the lawmakers to clarify that. They say that, look, constituency projects are undertaken by the executive arm of government. Hence the reference to the MDAs that Leila alluded to. And that there is no way in which any lawmaker is given any funds to execute any project. And that all they do is to identify projects that are important to their constituencies and maybe perhaps try to monitor so that government can reach the lowest levels. And they too can be seen to have encouraged government to do something in their area. So if they do not have access to any money, if they are not the contractors, so why will you blame them? Why will you not, and your mandate is public sector corruption, why will you not focus on the people in charge of the funds and the contractors, particularly, who may have received their mobilization? Even that mobilization now in the review of the National Procurement Law is now supposed to be increased from 15% to 30%. I hope the president will not approve that. So this is the position, and they've been the lawmakers have been very consistent. It's unfair to target them. And when the ICPC said Northeast is the most notorious, all the lawmakers from that region protested and said ICPC should not look in their direction.
Now, let me agree with you to say that, or rather to join you to say that, just as the lawmakers feel that it's their responsibility to monitor the implementation of what they have initiated, it is also the mandate of ICPC to make sure that those contracts awarded have been executed. Now, that is another way of making sure we are even helping the lawmakers to make sure that the job is done. Now, in the course of our activities, we have found that some of these projects were not even executed in the first place. Now, we have not gone after particular lawmakers. What we have done is that we look at the project wholesale and now see what is amiss. Has it been executed? If they are making purchases, have they been bought? Have they been supplied? Have the beneficiaries gotten them? Now, when we find that there's a break in the chain of delivery of that service, then we now look at that breakage. Who caused it? Is it that we've seen instances where empowerment equipment have been purchased, but some people kept them in their garage. Now, if projects, let's say empowerment equipment have been purchased, and I find it in your garage, with all due respect, I should ask you, why is it in your garage? So basically, if any lawmaker is questioned or asked any question, it's probably because we have found that maybe something meant for the marketplace is found in his house or one of those things. But it's not as if we are targeting the legislature or anybody. We look at the whole project wholesale. Is there any break in the chain? Is there anybody in the chain that is not doing what is expected of him? Then if there is one, we go ahead and do that. And that's why I said that the primary focus of the ICPC is to make sure that the job is done. Now, if we find that some of the empowerment, like in the past, we found that some of the empowerment equipment have been purchased, but they are lying somewhere. The first thing we do, though people didn't like it, some people felt we should have done something else, but the first thing our chairman did was to make sure that those things are immediately delivered to the beneficiaries. Now, if after doing that, it is found that somebody has committed a criminal offense in the process, then further action can be taken. But the main purpose is to make sure that those empowerment projects, those things that the government wants to put in place for the benefit of the generality of our people, get to them.
Okay, that's fair enough. And Let me bring something else in here, which is the current administration's efforts or war against corruption, let's say. That is what the president went on in his 2015 campaign. That is the message he pushed when he came back to campaign ahead of the 2019 elections. And his entire administration has had ending corruption at the forefront of their agenda. How much progress would you say has really been made in that particular sense, both in terms of enforcement and also in terms of prevention, which you mentioned are the two aspects that we need to focus on? Because some people would argue that instead of a war against corruption, there's just been a targeted wild goose chase against certain people. And it's been quite political, it's been quite party-based, and people don't necessarily feel as though it's been real and genuine and really to the core. What is your take on this, working with the ICPC? How would you say the government has progressed with this war against corruption?
Well, my own position, my own view would be that no particular group or persons have been targeted in the fight against corruption. The question I will want to ask, or I will want people to ask themselves is, for those people that have been put in the front line as being under investigation or things, is any of them not, hasn't any of them done anything wrong? Is any of them free? We have facts and evidence showing that somebody has committed an offense. That's why we are going after that person. The person may be a member of a political party, he may not be, but that's not our focus in ICPC. What happens is that when we get information regarding the commission of an offense, we go after the person. Now, it may be possible that your enemies will supply us with the information we need to go after you, not you personally. But then it doesn't matter how the information gets to us. It doesn't matter who is being reported. We go after that person, and if we find any infractions, we go to the courts or take the necessary actions. So, with regards to progress being made by the government in the fight against corruption, I can say wholeheartedly that I see progress. In fact, I see it's a kind of a jump start in the fight against corruption with the new management we have in ICPC. So we are making substantial progress, and with our prof on ground, I'm sure we'll get there.
Well, on that note, we'll take a short commercial break, and we'll come back to you. The conversation will continue. Still with us in our Lagos studio is Shintema Binga, Resident Commissioner, Independent Corrupt Practices Commission, Lagos. Welcome back to the morning show here on the Arise News Channel. Still with us is Shintema Binga, Resident Commissioner of the Independent Corrupt Practices and Related Offences Commission in Lagos. And, well, we've been looking at Anti-Corruption Day. If you look at the UN Convention on the International Corruption Challenge, the convention says state parties should enlist the support of the public. And even, President Buhari is always saying, Nigerians should also support the anti-corruption agencies, hence, I guess, the whistleblower policy. But as someone who runs a branch of the ICPC, what level of support have you been able to enlist? That's the agency itself, from the Nigerian public, and what has been the response? I know there is a national volunteer corps, anti-corruption volunteer corps, but are there other NGOs involved? And today, as you mark Anti-Corruption Day, the UN Secretary General has talked about raising awareness. So your sitting here is a way of raising awareness. Do you have other activities to mark the day? And what's the level of involvement of the people themselves?
Well, you are right. It is plain knowledge that, or rather, we have all agreed that the government and ICPC cannot fight corruption alone. We have to get the citizenry and the public involved in the fight against corruption. In that regard, the ICPC has introduced some initiatives to get the generality of the people to be involved in the fight against corruption. And that came about the setting up of the National Anti-Corruption Volunteer Corps. Now, the National Anti-Corruption Volunteer Corps is a scheme whereby all members of the public are enjoined to put hands together in the fight against corruption. They are not expected to take it as a full-time job, but what they are expected to do is that wherever they are, in their various offices and places, they bring if they see any infraction of the anti-corruption laws, they report to us. And then, not the NAVC alone, but let me not go without saying that we have in Lagos enlisted a very notable professor of international relations, Professor Akinteriwa. He is our Lagos State coordinator of the NAVC. And by getting somebody of...
Professor Bola Akinteriwa,
yes,
former
Professor.
Director General of the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs.
That is correct. Now, the level at which we are operating is just to make it very clear that the NAVC is not just it's just not for small people, let me use that word, but it's for every people, in the sense that both those who are low in the levels of society and those in the high levels are also involved in the NAVC. That is why we are getting people at that level to join. We also have the National Anti-Corruption Coalition of the ICPC. Now, that is a coalition, or that is a coming together of NGOs, CBOs, and all that to come together to find best practices in the fight against corruption. Now, we come together, we discuss best practices, we share ideas, and they also report to us when they see infractions of the anti-corruption laws. Apart from that, we have also enlisted the schools and the school children. We have the anti-corruption clubs in our secondary schools. We have the anti-corruption vanguard in our tertiary institutions. Now, we also have the anti-corruption monitoring unit in our MDAs. All these come together. All these are schemes aimed at getting the generality of our people involved in the fight against corruption. And as you have said, rightly mentioned earlier, today being the World Anti-Corruption Day, we have arranged public publicity for the day, this, as you have mentioned, being one of them. And also, we are going to stage a march. It's about to start any moment from now. We are going to march, do a walk, let me use that word, from our office to create awareness around the area. And then we are going to have lectures wherein we are going to talk to our people on and against corrupt practices. And then at the end of the day, we'll fold up basically that is the plan for the anti-corruption day.
You don't plan a dinner or a party to mark the day?
Well, I can assure you that if you support us with the funding, we are available to. But for now, we have only, let me say, refreshment, water. I mean, you can't bring people out in the sun and all that and not give them water to freshen up. But basically, we have, let me say, we have safety measures to make sure that the work goes on safely, but not a dinner.
Okay. Now, the ICPC, in your full name, is not just the Independent Corrupt Practices Commission, but the Independent Corrupt Practices Commission and other related offences. What exactly constitutes under those other related offences that we speak of?
Well, it's a creation of law. Now, when we talk about the other related offences, let's start with disobeying the anti-corruption law itself. Now, offenses have been created under the law. Now, if somebody is invited and he fails to honor invitation, that is an offense. So you cannot say that is really corruption, but then it's other related offenses. But more specifically, the law itself allows the Commission to investigate cases relating to fraud and, or rather, in the course of investigation of a crime under the Act, if the investigator finds that another offense, criminal offense, has been committed somewhere, the Act permits the person to go ahead and investigate and also take further action. So it may not really be corruption, it may be financial crimes, it may be other, or rather, it may not be, it may be other aspects of corruption, not specifically mentioned in the ICPC Act, but then there are offenses that also constitute corrupt practices but are not specifically mentioned in the Act. They may be found in the Money Laundering Act, they may be found in the BOFIA, Banks and Financial Institutions Act, and others. So those are some of the other offenses being referred to under the ICPC Act.
Well, I mean, the definition of the other related offenses that you have offered now, a Nigerian listening to you is likely to think that, look, it looks like there is a duplication of functions and overlap between the ICPC and the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. And you know, there are people who have been suggesting that in order to save costs and to concentrate effort, I don't know whether you have heard this, that the ICPC and the EFCC should be merged. Now, that's one proposal. But beyond that, I would like to know whether there is indeed any synergy between the ICPC and the EFCC, and whether on the occasion of the World Anti-Corruption Day, the ICPC and the EFCC, whether you are doing the campaign together or each institution is separate and working in its own silo.
Well, I will not say there's a duplication of functions here. Now, when in my definition or my explanation of the other related offenses, I made it clear that in the course of investigating offenses created under the ICPC Act, if the investigator finds that another offense, please mark the word another offense, has also been committed, then he's allowed to go ahead and put them together. However, if a petition is brought to ICPC and we find that it's strictly financial crimes, we have this synergy with the other anti-corruption agencies to direct that petition to them. That is one option. The other option is that we'll advise the petitioner to go to the other side. So it's a synergy that has been on ground for long and is still ongoing. Now, on the celebration of the Anti-Corruption Day, it's a matter of planning. We in Lagos here, we are in Lagos State Office of ICPC, we are marking it here. I can assure you, in other states of the Federation where we have offices, they're also marking it. The chairman also in headquarters is also marking it. So we are not coming together under one roof to mark it. So in the same vein, other anti-corruption agencies and anti-corruption support groups can also mark it in their own way, the way they want it. However, we invite ourselves, and I can assure you that we have more than 3 invitations from other anti-corruption support groups in Lagos here for us to participate, and we have designated some of our officers to be there present. So we may not be standing under one roof celebrating it, but we are all one in spirit in the fight against corruption.
But what about in work, in terms of just in general, the idea of a merge between the EFCC and the ICPC, the two bodies coming together as one institution and carrying out all relative offenses under one body rather than two? What is your take on that?
Actually, I do not see the need or necessity for a merger. The reason being that each of these agencies has specific mandates that they execute. Now, ICPC focuses on corruption. Now,
public sector.
No, thank you for mentioning that. You mentioned it earlier on, and I wanted to correct you.
Okay.
Now, ICPC is not just a public sector corruption fighting agency. No. There are other offenses, or rather acts of criminality that take place outside the public service that ICPC can come in to investigate. For instance, there's a provision in the ICPC Act, let's say Section 17(1)(c) of the ICPC Act, makes provision for an offense whereby somebody gives to his principal any document, account, or information that is misleading or contains false information. Now, that can emanate from anywhere, not necessarily in the public service. so long as there's this relationship of agent and principal relationship. So it's not really, I'm just giving you one example. So it is erroneous to think that ICPC is just for public service. No, it is just for corruption. Now back to the issue of the major issue. ICPC, or rather EFCC, is empowered to fight economic crimes, financial and economic crimes. Yes, by definition, you'll find that it's another form of corruption, but then it is distinct from the public service corruption that you were mentioned.
Well,
and all
thank you very much, Shintema,
Binga,
and thank you for your insights and for honoring our invitation.